Alrighty, hello, and welcome to my channel. Thanks for tuning in. This is an educational channel, and this is a segment that we have called Your Blind Side, where I try to kind of protect the six of the diggers, anons, and truthers out there in the info war that have contributed to our impending victory over the deep state and our hopeful sovereignty on this planet. Um, but sometimes, if you do all the digging, you might not be able to see the full picture, and you might have some gaps in your understanding. Um, now, uh, as I have been saying, I believe that the InfoWar is basically a done deal, that it's all wrapped up, but they still have to play out the string. Um, and so the string that they play out is going to be kind of offensive because it's really trying to bring the catatonic um, up to speed with the events so that they can appreciate what's going on, because there needs to be much greater consensus out there than there is currently. We're dealing with a situation that is more um, polarized. But it's polarized, but one side of the polarization is kind of is mostly asleep. Um, and I don't really mean that in a derogatory manner, because they're smart people. It's just that they're in a trance. And so they are, it's kind of like if you're awake or asleep. If you're, you could be a very smart person when you're awake, but if you're asleep, it doesn't do you any good. And so I think that's part of it. But then, so I urge patriots out there to, instead of continuing with the info war, to kind of check out and to work on red pilling yourselves. There's a lot more red pills that need to be taken, especially if we're going to win this and we're going to be able to implement our agenda onto the world at large. It better be the right agenda. It better not be all infested with deep state, propaganda, motifs, symbolism, and all of that. Um, and I can tell you right now that if we implemented what we wanted to right now, it would be all infested with that. So, you know, take your shovels that you've been applying to the dig on the deep state, and start digging on yourself. Dig on your belief systems and your um, values and your heroes and your culture and your history and your diet and your holidays and your rituals and your, everything about yourself. Make sure that it's not a product of deep state, you know, um, origin. And then when we do finally, all the events finally play out, which could take years, um, we'll be ready. It's going to require a lot of emotional hand wringing, you know. There's a lot of things that you're going to have to give up. There's a lot of things that you thought were, you know, righteous that are not. It's going to be just like red pilling the first time you were red pilled. You're going to be feeling like you got rug pulled, and that you're like, what happened? How did I think that? Or, you know, and it's gonna, you're gonna go through denial, and you're gonna have, um, you know, you're gonna probably reject it at first and resist it, and then, you know, it's gonna be the same process. But the point that I was making basically is that I have not been really paying much attention to the info war because I just it's just it's not for me. They're not communicating to me. The events that are being played out, they're not for me. They're not uh, you know targeted to me. They're targeted to people who are catatonic because they're in a trance. Um, Now, I do think that the Patriots are in a trance of a different sort, but it's the same kind of thing. It's less major. It doesn't affect their whole lives, but it's a religious trance. The word Christianity, Jesus Christ, or the Bible or the New Testament is enough to trigger the trance, and it's like this deferential trance. I'm not allowed to criticize this. I have to go along with this because I haven't done enough work to be able to criticize this. I I've kind of accepted it as reality because my friends, family, loved ones have foisted it upon me when I was a kid or whatever. And some of my older, now my colleagues are really into it, and I don't want to be insulting to them. So instead, I'll just say, "Amen, brother," when you bring it up. When you say Jesus is Lord, what you should be saying is like, are you trying to force that on me? Because you're not giving me any evidence. You know, it, are you trying to convince yourself that that's true? What is the meaning of that statement? You know, I mean, the meaning of that statement is Jesus is Lord, but it's not a truth or statement. It's a say it, repeat it as many times as possible, and you'll believe it regardless. It's like an advertising message or propagandistic message. But instead of calling it out for what it is, you say, "Amen, brother," and that's not good enough. And that's going to be the basis of a lot of our problems moving forward. So anyway, as a result of not really paying any attention, I have been following some of the sports and stuff like that. There's a lot of interesting stories out there, but the World Cup is the dominant one. And what it seems like is it really seems like the American people, for the first time, and I know the World Cup was here in '94, but really for the first time, the American people are like really into it. They've caught the fever. Um, and it just seems like more than the last time. And it could be messaging. This could be part of an op. That's why I want to talk about it. And it, just like I was saying, it could be rigged too. But like I think if it's rigged, that's even more reason to watch it because there are going to be comms and agendas that are going to be exposed by the rigging. And but and if even if not, if you can rig a sport, I mean, I can understand if you just rig the result. But if you because you only need a couple people to do that, especially in soccer. Like if you pay off the ref, um, or the striker or the goalie, just let a couple goals in. Um, you can completely affect the result of the game. Um, but the drama and you know that would imply that the people involved, their acting is just incredible. Oscar worthy type acting. If there's some type of systematic um, uh, rigging going on, but let's just pretend that there isn't. Um, there's just a lot of great drama that's happening. But just on the social level, I believe that the American people are just really getting enchanted with soccer. But I also think that the people from around the world are just really getting enchanted with the United States. You know, it's kind of like this double revelation that's going on, this two-way revelation that's going on, where people that thought that the United States was just a bunch of hicks, you know, and rednecks and Bible thumpers and you know gun freaks and you know or whatever they thought. They're realizing that it's not like that. That it's way more sophisticated than that, and even the people that are even like that even are the you know the gun freaks and the Bible thumpers, they're super nice and pleasant to be around and not nearly as like close-minded and bigoted as you thought. And so I think that it's kind of like a two-way awakening that really has the potential to change things in this world because um, I just think America is kind of like re making its image in a more positive light around the world. So you know that kind of and we'll see because you know we still have another like 3 weeks of this to go, and it's going to be more and more intense. And there just seems to be a ton of soccer fans from like all of these different nations here, and all the good teams are still in it. Nobody is like choked, and but there's just a lot of upstart teams like Cape Verde, you know, just like incredible stories, and the old guys are playing great. You thought they were washed up, you thought they were retired, and they're still like out there dealing. And then there's, you know, the U.S. team has got the best team they've ever had. And Canada and Mexico are still in it and playing it very well. And so it's pretty exciting, especially for this kind of lull period where the events that are, you know, now this is no substitute for getting yourself red pilled. This is what you do during your distraction time. You know, your 30 to 60 minutes a day that you can allot to, trying to like put your mind off, you know, what your main goals are. But maybe you can build a bridge through that. Okay, like, share, subscribe, comment, contribute, and come back tomorrow for another episode. And just remember to watch your blind side.